Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the transition table. My name is Megan Kearney,
And I'm Dion Hartz-Worsoff.
and today we're going to be talking about the EPI, the Exit Planning Institute Summit that Dion just went to this past week. Well, honestly, we haven't talked a ton about EPI Summit, so I'm super excited just to hear a bit more about your experience. And I guess my first question is, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about more of who you are, what your role is in the exit planning space?
Sure. So, as we talked about last time, I'm the president of Exit Factor of Salt Lake City and Utah County. And we really have the chair of being the value advisors. We are the ones who help business owners better understand how to improve their business for when they are ready to leave. But I
Hmm.
think one of the key thoughts that I did get at the conference is that exit planning is just a really good business strategy. That was emphasized a lot.
I love that. That's great. You kind of answered my next question about what is exit planning and does that mean to you, personally and professionally. So we'll kind of go into more of, questions about the summit. So first question is, what were the themes or trends that you saw at this year's summit?
Interestingly, there were two main themes that struck me, and one was developing partnerships. They talked a lot about why it's important to have good partnerships with the people around the table. One of the key concepts in the SEPA training, which is the Certified Exit Planning Advisor, is that there are different people around the table and you want to put together the right team. And there were a lot of calls for encouraging collaboration, networking with people that could be complementary to the work that you're doing, because we work on the business side, but even within our space, we're not the accountants, we're not the business lawyers, and we want to help them find that in addition to the other um, seats around the table, including wealth advisors, family advisors, financial planners, personal. Sometimes you need therapy if it's a family business. There was a lot of talk about that. Um, so that was a really, really big theme there.
Yeah, I like that. I think, we talk about that every day with business owners and people who work with business owners.
Right.
And I think that's a very important topic that it does take, a team to help, a single business owner and what they're doing. And it's not just an individual. And I like that aspect of, how we help in that way. Um, Another question I had was, how do you feel like, or how has the summit challenged or expanded your thinking so far beyond what you've already known?
I think the biggest thing was hearing from different people. And one of the other concepts in the SEPA training is that there are three legs to the stool, kind of like our logo. And
Yep.
one is the business, one is your wealth, and one is your personal goals. And there was a lot of talk about um, asking the right questions, really listening to our clients. There was a great story that one of the speakers talked about. I think his name was John Ward, and he does intergenerational family transfers. And he says, never give it away because that's how you ruin value. And
Hmm.
he also said, you want to make sure that you have a plan in place for passing it on appropriately. And he told the story about where he met with someone who was in a multi generational family business. This guy was like in his mid 70s. And as they're having the conversation, he says, so, what are you thinking about for the next generation as the leader of this company? And this man said, oh, I'm not the leader of the company. My father is. And the next thing you know, they wheeled in a 95-year-old guy who is in a wheelchair who's still the head of the business.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, it's
It
so
was
interesting
it was
that
funny, but
yeah,
almost scary. And I
yeah,
think that's something that you and I see also when we talk with our clients is people are afraid of letting go, and
Hmm.
that we have some really good resources available to help them build a business that they can sell, that they can pass on, that they can maybe, sell to management. And I thought that was really eye-opening.
Yeah, the psychological aspect of owning a business and transitioning. And I know we'll
Yes.
talk about that in later episodes, but that's a huge part of it. And like you said, it's hard to see, but it's almost comical in the sense of this is why you need to start planning. You just don't know what's going to happen, and you shouldn't let the last person, be in charge just because they've always been that person, but rather taking a back seat and more of an advisor role. So,
Right. And, at the end of the day, do business owners really want to leave their businesses feet first?
mhm.
That's not the ideal.
Yeah, I like
So,
that. It's very true. Yeah, the next question would just be more about just share any golden nuggets or powerful insights that you've taken away from that summit.
um, for me, it was there were a couple of really, really good speakers. Um, and one of the things was talking about being, a servant leader and working with our clients to ask questions. Don't walk in and tell them, this is what I'm good at and this is what we're going to do. I looked at your financials, but really asking them the questions. And one of my personal favorites was, which was brought up, is the five whys.
Hmm.
Have you heard of that?
Classic. Yes, very, I feel like that's a very classic five whys, and I think it's important. Do you want to walk through those five whys?
Well, the five whys are basically that you ask a business owner, and a lot of business owners will start the conversation with, I'm really burnt out, or I can't go on vacation. And you ask them, why are you burnt out? And they give you a response. Why do you feel that way?
Yep.
And it really ends up digging down to the core of what's bothering them. And I think that's a big deal, because if we understand what's really bothering them, that's where we can start and help them on the business side. Whether it's, I worry about cash flow, or I'm a seasonal business, or I don't think my kids want the business. What do I do? Those are all valid questions, but sometimes you have to dig a little deeper to do that. I think one of the big jokes with a few people that I met at the conference is, there's a lot of times where we're really just being glorified therapists or unpaid therapists.
Yep, for sure.
And
I
it's
know I
and it's a
always
very emotional thing for people to.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I feel like the whys for me, I've worked with kids a lot of my life, and I think about it in that way of like they ask multiple questions every day, thousands and thousands of questions, and they're like, why? Why this? Why that? Like they just are
Right.
so curious. And so I try to channel that inner curiosity when talking with business owners. So we're really making sure we're able to serve them in that right way. So I love that. I think that's a great point. The next question is more about just where do you see the biggest knowledge gaps are or misconceptions in how business owners approach exit planning?
I feel a little repetitive, but I think that the biggest issue is that business owners think they don't need exit planning. And I think that we need to reframe the conversation, that exit planning is really developing a really strong business strategy. And if you haven't put that together, um, it it will hurt you in the long run. I mean, you know, even talking about succession planning and contingency planning, and I know we're going to talk about those things in future episodes, but um, when I was working in nonprofits, there was um, the head of one of the mental health agencies, and she was killed in a car crash. And there wasn't anything in place on what to do when she was gone. And I think that that's something that business owners don't think about. I think we all think we're a little bit invincible. I think we all believe that, I'm going to work until they take me out feet first. What happens the day after that?
It's true.
And I think that's a huge misconception. And I think that business owners get so caught in the weeds that they think that exit planning or developing a strategy is a luxury and not a necessity. And what we provide on the business side is a necessity, and it partners really, really well with the other parts of planning for your future.
I love that. Mic drop, honestly. I like that a lot. True. It's all true.